Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you here, sharing in this space of growth, healing, and transformation. If you've already subscribed to Loving Everything, thank you for being a part of this beautiful community. Your support means so much, and together, we're creating a space where love in all its forms can be explored and embraced. As you listen to this episode, if it resonates with you, I invite you to like the video and share it with anyone who might benefit from the insights we're diving into today. These conversations are all about expanding our capacity to love ourselves, each other, and the world around us. And if you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to explore my other episodes where we journey into love's deepest, most unconditional forms. Each one is an invitation to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are waiting to be seen, healed, and loved. So thank you for being here. Let's begin. Jared, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really, really excited to talk to you, and I appreciate you making the time and for even being interested. Jared and I are both in the master's program for counseling and addiction at Lewis and Clark College. And we were at a Halloween party talking about classes and how the program's going so far. And we got into some of your history. So I really appreciate you being willing to talk about it and share it with us. So
yeah, I didn't know that was like my tryout for the podcast that I didn't know I was going to be on.
Everyone's trying out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Everyone in my life is trying out. They just don't realize it.
I guess that's what we're all just trying to do.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
We're all auditioning for a podcast
we're all auditioning for a podcast.
Maybe.
Some sort of role in the world.
Yeah, true. So let's start simple, Jared. What was it like growing up in your family? I guess that wasn't okay.
No.
Where were you born? Let's start there.
I was born in California.
Okay.
Probably 5 minutes from Laguna Beach, a small town called San Clemente.
Yes.
Near
the water.
Scared of the water.
Like 15, 20 minutes south of where I lived as a teenager, which we just figured out.
Yeah, we did just figure that out. I think you like the water a little bit more than I did. But
you know, I'm afraid of the water. I'm not afraid of the water. I'm afraid of deep, open water.
Oh, man, yeah.
Probably I was just watching, I was cracking up at a comedian who was just doing a skit about like why people in Gen X are so tough. And one thing that she was talking about was how we watched Jaws, and back then that was PG, and our parents didn't really understand that might be really traumatic. And so I watched it very, very young. And my sisters loved singing that song every single time I was in the water. We had a boat. So, so
that's pretty scary.
For me, it was that I had too big of an imagination, and I shut it down for most of my life because I just couldn't imagine what might be swimming underneath me.
Yeah. I guess you have a different you have a different pedestal of fear. And then our generation
clear water,
is just
totally fine.
Yeah. I guess our generation, we're just scared of, our main source of fear is politics, I guess. And so we're not watching Jaws.
Well, yeah, but
I still got the shark fear,
you
though.
also had different parents because we were traumatized in the ways that we tried not to traumatize you, right?
Sure,
so the pendulum swung the opposite direction in the way that we raised our kids. We gave them orange slices at soccer games and showed up for everything.
Cuties.
And
cuties.
And got involved. And, I was a latchkey kid. So I walked home by myself from the bus stop. And my neighbor was home when I got home, and I was allowed to be over at her family with her two kids until my mom was, finished with work. So it was just a very different. It was a very different time, and we had, there were some great things about it because I lived in Southern California, so it was very rural. And, I could get on a horse and ride all by myself out into the hills when I was a certain age. It was probably like 12. But there were a lot of dangers to that. My sister's horse wasn't mine, and it would sometimes realize it was getting close to home and just start running, and I couldn't control it, and it would run across streets. And so like there were, I was unsupervised a lot, and we were also told to get outside.
Yeah.
Go outside. Go outside. Find something to do. That's what I was told.
Yeah, you're just getting on horses.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Or going out in the backyard.
Yeah, okay.
We had a pretty big backyard with animals.
Wow. Wait, what part of Southern California? Because my Southern California, I think, is different from yours. I was in San Juan
Capistrano initially until I was 12.
So you're in that big little gully there?
Yeah. Right off the freeway, actually. Right on the other side of the freeway.
Off Ortega?
Yes,
there?
Off of Ortega.
Yeah.
Yeah. Up on a hill. I can't remember the neighborhood. My sister would be able to tell you the neighborhood that's right below it, but it's the Village. I want to say right above the Village, if you know where that is. Yeah. Either way, we can talk about where we were growing up, but that's not really the point of the podcast.
Yeah. But you had me for a second because I was like, your Southern California is very different from mine. Because your horse is a real horse. My horse was just like a little Mazda. That I could put in park. You couldn't put yours in park.
I couldn't. I grew up in a different generation than you did.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay. 24. So I'm 51.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was there in the 70s and the 80s.
Okay.
And it was very, very rural. I mean, there was still a major freeway going through it, don't get me wrong, and major streets, but it didn't have as many people.
Right.
When you would drive through Irvine, there was still orange trees and strawberry groves.
Okay.
Where all the car dealerships and everything are now, and Irvine Spectrum and all of that. So like that didn't exist. So they were just open fields that you would ride a horse through. And so me and my sisters used to pretend like we were Laura Ingalls Wilder. We were like out in the middle of nowhere, according to us.
Yeah. And now the only oranges are just at a soccer game.
They get shipped in from Florida.
Yeah.
So very, very different life and very isolated. We were very isolated. Lived up on a hill with like maybe 15 custom homes, and we were there were maybe 8-10 kids in the entire neighborhood. So I didn't have anyone to play with that was my age necessarily. They were either much older or younger than me or kind of the same age, but not really. So like you just kind of made friends with whoever was around. And
gotcha.
Yeah. So it was a very, very isolated life. And I think that was also, that was intentional on my family's part. But let's get back to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it seems like you lived just the standard latchkey life.
I did.
Which I didn't know they existed near me, but maybe they did.
Oh, yeah.
27 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
All
yeah.
right.
So I forget that you are in the counseling field too, so you're going to want to interview me as well. Okay, so let's get back to you. What was it like growing up in your family?
My family was, I guess they still are. I don't really know how to describe them because there's so much there. I mean, other than they look like half of me. I did not have a latchkey. I was driven to and fro, everywhere really. My mom was the greatest. My dad is also the greatest, and I kind of had a life where it's just, on paper, you're like, what's wrong with that? Very grateful for how I grew up. I had a lot of good things to help me, prosper as a little kid, I guess. I played a lot of sports. Grew up playing tennis, or I guess I grew up swimming, but then. I was like, one day I just did not want to go, and I was just like face down on the concrete, or I guess the marble or whatever it was, and I was like, I'm not going swimming. So I guess this is when my fear of water started to surface, right? And so I was just like, I'm not going to go swimming today. And then started playing tennis, and tennis became my life for probably when I was 8, probably like 19. So however many years that is, 11. And I guess with that sport, your life starts to revolve around just, I guess, the opportunity that you can maybe play tennis in college. And for me, I was a very all or nothing kid, still am. But in a childhood, context, tennis was my all or nothing. And so for a while, it was just all tennis. School was never really my thing, which is funny now because I'm kind of dedicated to just learning for, an infinite amount of time,
Yeah.
I guess, because it took me forever to get through undergrad. I think I told you that.
Yeah.
And then I think it's going to take me forever to get through grad school. So I think I'm only doing the 3-year, not the 4-year.
Yeah.
But yeah, here I am learning. I didn't really learn much in, I guess, at the times when I was trying to learn. But yeah, I think life was mostly about just play, if I had to sum it up concisely there. Big play guy. Yeah, I loved games. My dad loved, there was always some sort of like playful wager or activity that he would be willing to do. And my mom was the world's biggest cheerleader. She'd be right there, just watching. Sometimes she wouldn't know what's going on. She would mostly. But for tennis, I remember she was just like, she's just full of love, and maybe this comes up, it probably resurfaces later in my psyche, later in my life. But she was just like so emotionally attached to how I was feeling. And if you've ever watched a tennis match, it's a sword fight. It's just two gladiators going at it. The whole range of emotions, from pull to pull, and it's something. And so my mom would just be there and watch me just go like, and then she'd be like, oh, I can't, and then go in the bathroom for like an hour. And so the whole dynamic of my dad sitting there just like, come on, Junior, you gotta hit that ball. And then my mom like just shitting herself, and I'm all mad on the court. And this whole triangle of, familial emotion, it was interesting. It was interesting. And so that was my life for a decent amount.
What years? How old were you?
I started playing tournaments when I was 13.
Okay.
And then I played till, let's say, like 16. I was doing quite well, but then I got into racing mountain bikes and just, I guess, football too, but some concussions from football, concussions from mountain biking. And then when I was really trying to go the college route, I ended up getting an offer from just like a little D3 school here in Oregon. But then I broke my wrist in like 3 different spots.
Ooh.
And got like a plate and screw and, just the whole array of metal in there. And that was it for tennis, I guess.
Wow.
But I found another way. Grew up in a very small school.
Which school did you go to?
It was St. Margaret's.
You went to St. Margaret's?
Yeah, right below you, I think.
Well, I had friends that went from St. Margaret's to Rancho Santa Margarita Catholic High School. I was the charter class there. But no, I went to Ambule, which was the elementary school that was
Does that
public.
still exist?
I don't know if it does, but that's where I went to Ambule.
Okay.
Ambule was right behind St. Margaret's.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that exists anymore.
I can't imagine why they would have torn it down, but yeah.
Yeah. Maybe St. Margaret's just engulfed it.
Well, it wasn't that big of a campus, but yeah, not like right directly behind it. I meant like, in the same area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was in the public school. Yeah.
Okay.
St. Margaret's is private. So.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, we're going to have a lot of, I can tell we're going to have a lot of overlapping, like, oh, you went there, you did that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. And did you have any siblings?
I was an only child.
Okay.
No.
So your parents were directly focused on you and your success. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where my dad's love for the idea of me playing tennis, I guess, prospered a little bit.
Was he disappointed when you stopped?
No, he wasn't disappointed. He's always been supportive of me. But I I think as an only child set of parents, you do want some sort of like destination to put your love into. And there's no better spot than that, than tennis. And so, I mean, I think, and my mom too, it's been her job, just taking care of me. And so,
Is it still her job to take care of you?
no, no, I finally got a job and I took over her job, I guess. Took over the family business, I suppose.
Of taking care of you?
Yeah. Taking care of myself.
Good.
But yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So let's see. I'm going to skip some questions because you covered them. Did you feel like you had to earn love or approval growing up in any way?
No, I don't think so. I think love has always been there.
Okay.
I guess I never really had to learn how to love everything. It was really shown through me. Because I have two very passionate parents, which I think helps set a role to yourself to, I guess, how to approach certain things with a certain amount of gusto, My parents were like maximum gusto all the time. And it shows up in, like how they deal with people, how they do with their lives. It's just so much energy there and passion. But I think as an only child, you're inherently, I think, set up to kind of, you're auditioning, I guess. I think that's a little bit what it felt like, because you don't really have a way of competing with your siblings, and maybe in that sense, as a kid, you're always auditioning, only child or not. But I think I always wanted, like a big quote. My dad will mention this a lot. He's, in every like holiday or whatever, he would say like, he would quote me, and I was like 4 years old or 5 years old whenever I first learned what an idea of a brother was. And he would say like, yeah, he was always wanting one brother that was 1 second younger than him, and so he could beat at everything. And I think that was true for the most part, but I wanted a child.
Very competitive.
Very competitive. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever stop being competitive. I'll still be at the retirement home, just, I'll be the shark, the local like bocce shark.
Getting mad at checkers.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
I interrupted you. Keep going. You always remember that you wanted another brother or sibling? Did you want one?
Yeah. I wanted Buddy so badly. Yeah. I think being alone was a tough thing. It's always been a tough thing. I think now even, now I'm taking on the role of taking over myself. My mom's retired from that job. I have to that's the part about being human. You got to learn how to be an adult and love it. Or not an adult, but be alone. Be alone, right?
Yes, you do.
Yeah. But as a kid, I think my mom had 7 miscarriages trying to have me.
Wow.
And so I think in my mind, I was like, well, those babies are still out there, because when I was born, I guess I was programmed with the idea that I had some other guys out there, some fellow soldiers. But no, I think I just learned the hard way. There's not going to be another one. My mom tried really hard. Sorry, she tried really hard. My dad probably tried hard too. But my mom, she's the kid bearer, and so she was the big pair of kid there, I guess.
You were very anticipated.
Yeah.
They had high expectations by the time you were born.
A lot of expectations.
A lot of expectations.
Yeah, but I think it was like a flame of expectation, It's never like the same heat, the same height or whatever forever. It kind of burns in the way that, a flame burns. And so every once in a while, it's just like, oh, we expected so much of you. But then I'll just like, spill the milk all over the place. And they're just like, well, we didn't know what to expect, And I guess that could be a metaphor for later in life, in my own doings. But
you're really gracious with them.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Were there any unmet needs that you carried from childhood into your adulthood?
And have you learned how to meet those needs in a healthier way now?
I mean, I think I've always had the need of people, the need of stimulation. And as a kid, I was always drawn to, games of some sort. I've been like fully obsessed into, little corners of life here and there, like video games, sports. I would just dedicate seven days a week, just all my time to just something at a time. But I think now growing up, I'm realizing that it was more a distraction than it was a passionate thing that comes from an authentic part of me. So I think growing up, now that I've been able to successfully surround myself with good people, I'm less, I think, like I need to be the best and distract myself with being better than, and like proving to myself that I'm worthy in this game or in this sport, whatever. And so I think slowly as I've become more social, I've realized that it's not the one thing that I've been looking for, not trying to like be the best at tennis, but I kind of just don't want to be alone, I guess. Yeah, maybe it's just this unmet need of wanting a sibling. And, at the time being very sour about not having a little buddy right by my side all the time. But then, I don't think I would take that back for the world.
Well, it taught you your strength.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
It was a very hard lesson.
Yeah.
It was a very hard lesson. My daughter has learned the same, but, I was supposed to, I was pregnant at 19, so she would have had an older child had I chose, or older sibling had I chose to not terminate the pregnancy. So she always felt like there was someone supposed to be there for her. And seven people were supposed to be there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to believe that that's there's something there.
So there's something larger there, right? You miss the soul or souls that were supposed to come through but didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting word, supposed to,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think supposedly I'm supposed to be right here, talking about why that was a sour thing for me. But then if that never happened, and the regression game is it's a pointless thing because you can't ever live in a world where the maybe what if, But I'm very grateful for how things turned out. I liked playing tennis. I love games. Probably more than anything. And I don't think I would have gotten that if I had just a little buddy, I think it all comes back from being alone, I think.
Or you could have had that and you
Maybe
could have had it with them.
Yeah.
There was that reality too. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not trying to imagine a reality other than the one you've lived. But I am saying that there's a longing there, right? There's a soul longing there that I don't think is illegitimate. Like I think there's some validity to it, that longing. I think that we do come here in soul families. And so that was part of your family that you missed out on. It doesn't mean that you weren't strong enough to do it on your own. It just means like that might be where the longing comes from.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a different tangent than where I was headed, but
I appreciate a good tangent.
Let's see. Okay, what's a behavior or coping mechanism you adopted as a child that doesn't serve you anymore?
Being clean, I would say.
You're not clean now?
No, I'm very clean now, but it's It's like crippling cleanliness, I think. In the last 4 years, it's been a challenge because, or I would say even like 6 years since I started living with other people. It's odd because all growing up, there are two worlds, right? There's a world of clean, there's a world of dirty, and the world of dirty belongs to the outside, and to the inside, that's your clean little bubble, your little sanctuary of detergent and clean things, right? But moving with other people, the outside world starts to blend in with the inside world there. And so there's shoes on the carpet and you're like, what? That's a weird thing. And then your buddy will like get out of his car and then just sit on your bed, like right where the pillow is. And you're like, that's insane to me, And when you grow up in a certain way, and like my mom's pretty clean. My dad is too. And I guess typical Asian household, shoes off, right? And then typical Oregon way is just, it's all love, just socks and feet and shoes and like upholstery. It's all the same thing. All go together. And so maybe it's this like culture that I brought from my little clean house into the general Oregon. But yeah, I don't know, being accustomed and used to a pattern or a routine has always been something that's helped me. Like I guess, and like an OCD, I think I have tools that I've like taken out from my, I might say crippling patterns, or my affinity to patterns, I guess. Not patterns, but like routines, I guess. And so I like being clean. I like being clean. That's always been a good thing for me. But I think it comes down to like a control thing. I want to have control over what's in front of me, and I want it to all be mine. And the idea that like there's stuff that's like contaminated or whatever, I think somewhere deep inside my psyche that's been, it just doesn't agree with that, and I think it wrinkles into other corners of my life where it's not just a matter of like, is it clean? It's more so maybe something, a little bit more existential, right? But yeah, I would say that doesn't serve me as well as it used to in a house where I'm, ordered to be clean, I guess,
I mean, if we're going to go the existential route, everything is energy. So the fact that somebody does sit in their car and then comes and sits on your pillow, there is a transference of energy. Yeah. So clean or not, it's not about good or bad, right? Those are human constructs, but it is about like feeling different when certain energy or cleanliness, without detergent, is brought into your space.
Yeah.
So Asian culture is very respective of energy. Yeah. They, women use brooms for years, hundreds of years, to clear out the energy of a space. So that's very significant in that culture, and everything's very organized for a reason, because there's a respect of space.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that isn't something to necessarily be demonized. It's not about inclusivity. You don't need to have inclusivity on things that don't make you feel good, right? And that's just having a good boundary, right? Yeah. If you had a good emotional boundary, if you were like, hey, friend who just left the car and sat on my pillow, I don't want you screaming at me while you're in my room either. It'd be the same thing. It's like there are certain things that just aren't safe or appropriate for you, and having that as a determining factor is just good boundaries around, unless it's like to the point where you can't let somebody in your apartment because, they haven't showered today, then that might be a pretty extreme boundary, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, no, I've let everybody in, no matter how dirty they are.
Yeah.
It could also be an only child thing. I was thinking while you were talking about that.
Yeah.
Just I'm used to everything being like mine, And so I guess when you say things that have developed that no longer serve me, I've always put it into that context rather than, I guess, the cultural approach that you brought, where I'm like, I don't know, am I selfish with my cleanliness, and I've become stubborn with...
What's my impact on other people, like the more logical side of it.
Yeah.
No, I got that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, how did your parents react when you're a kid and you made any mistakes, and how did this shape how you view any failure now?
They were never punishing, very forgiving, very forgiving. And I think to the point where I would, I'd mess up and create this grand mess of myself, and it was okay, and I think that's a beautiful thing for a parent to be able to do, right? Just say, you tripped, but I'm going to help you up. But I think I got used to that, because I love my, getting used to things part about myself.
We all do.
I would always just get used to things being okay. And I think eventually that turned into just not caring about consequences. And so it would, I think, express itself as reckless behavior, like driving, biking, just injuring myself, and, I'd get the surgery, and then that idea of it's going to be okay will be reinforced,
Wow. That's interesting.
And yeah. And I think the way I conducted my relationships too, it was a lot, I was fairly quiet as a kid, but quite angry too. And so it would be one of those things where I'd have this interaction, and, as a kid, you have no idea what's happening once you get all pissed. But then once it's all over, you're like, that probably wasn't good, and so you make amends. And so there was a little feedback loop there, me getting in weird little predicaments, I guess, and then it being okay. Because my circle of friends was, pretty tight and small, and so you kind of just had to be okay with things, right? And I think in a lot of ways that idea was reinforced, whether it be like breaking my wrist, or I'd play Xbox on like a Tuesday when I'm not allowed to, and then my mom would just say like, just give you one of those.
Why were you so angry when you were a kid?
I don't know. Because I'm not angry really much at all now. I must have just gotten it all out. Maybe I was... I don't know.
Is there a such thing?
No. It'll always respawn there, I guess.
Yeah. It's a normal, natural emotion to feel.
Yeah, it's a reaction. Maybe I was just tired of being alone, I guess. I felt like I had something to do that I wasn't able to do. I used to be pretty angry. I don't think I'm angry anymore, but I've surrounded myself by good people, and so maybe that's part of it. Maybe I was just like existentially alone, and was just pissed because of that.
I know I was.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. There's a significant age gap between me and my two older sisters. I mean, not like 12 years. Some people is more significant. I'm not saying, but I did have sisters, but one they were not thrilled. Well, okay, the one that's closest to me was thrilled that I was born, but they were not, when they got older, they were not, like, it was not cool to have me. Like, I was just the baby.
Little brat.
Right. So, like, they just didn't want me around. So I had siblings that didn't want me around.
Okay, yeah.
And then there was such a huge age gap that we didn't have a lot in common.
I see. Yeah. That's almost worse
Yeah.
than being alone.
Well, again, it teaches you
The
lessons.
hard lesson, hard truth.
Well, I mean, obviously at a soul level, I wanted to learn the lesson of being able to survive on my own. Yeah. Otherwise I wouldn't have put myself in that environment and circumstance.
Right. Yeah.
So that's how
You became very independent, and you are very independent today.
I've become very independent, and that's not who I was as a child. I was painfully shy, and talking to an adult, especially a man, would make me cry. And ordering at the counter at McDonald's would make me cry. And having a conversation with anyone bigger or taller or stronger was very, very intimidating. And so, I don't know where I was going with that, but basically it was in regards to what you said right before that.
Yeah. The pendulum swung the other way.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying it taught me to be independent. So I was taught to be independent. It wasn't something that came natural to me.
Yeah. No one gave you the blueprint, but somebody showed you in that way.
I found my way through it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, you and I have similarities there for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So what hurdles did you face in your life, and how did you attempt to overcome them?
I ran track, so I jumped over them in that literal sense. I was never very school smart, and so that was always, I've always had raging ADHD, could never focus on a thing, and so I don't know if I overcame them in my youth, but later in life, I think I managed to go around the hurdle, I guess. Did not overcome, but just, I guess, avoid. And, I think that played into my addiction very much as well, not wanting to deal with a certain thing, not wanting to be alone. I think they're all similar threads there. But I think most of my life has been, I'm not going to say most, but I think all of the big hard truths have come from a hurdle that, instead of saying, like, I can jump that, just either, doing a whole 180 pivot or just not even trying to jump. But I guess the thing with that is that if you're running around a circular track, and you just keep on moving past it, you're going to have to jump over that hurdle, eventually, right? Because you're just going to pass it again. And so I've been slowly trying to, I guess, work my way over those hurdles. But yeah, I've been very vulnerable to just saying, like, not today, or, I don't care that I'm alone and sad and depressed, because that doesn't matter, because I have this whatever this is that's going to get me through it, and I think that whatever that is, that's a way of not going around the hurdle, turning into some sort of maladaptive behavior that'll, take you away from the moment temporarily, but doesn't remove that problem forever,
No, it just puts the pause button on it.
Yeah. I was hitting the pause or fast forward even, or the power off button. All those.
What is your favorite game, by the way? Do you have one?
Game, or like video game, or just any sort of game?
You get to name. Yeah, you said
Pool.
you love games.
Pool right now.
Pool, that's right.
Yeah,
I forgot you have a pool table.
Yeah. I think my life right now is pool and basketball, I would say. Chess, maybe.
Oh, you like to play chess.
Yeah, I like some sort of thinking when I'm playing a game.
My daughter really likes chess.
Oh,
She's
yeah?
really good at it, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, chess is great.
My dad does it too, or plays it, I should say.
Yeah. It was big during COVID because, you you don't really need to go anywhere. You just play on your phone. You don't really want to talk to anybody, and so you could just pretend like there's a person that's moving the pieces. Just imagine their face, but just some guy in India that you're matched up against.
You play both sides of the board?
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes I did, but yeah. I mean, when you'd play on like an online platform, it would match you with just, some guy. But part of the game was just like imagining that there is a real person there,
Mm-hmm.
but you're just like, what does this guy look like? And so you'd get on the chat board and say like, hey, buddy. And then he would say nothing. And you're like, I am alone in this world. You right?
Mm.
No, but that was COVID. Yeah, I played a lot of chess during COVID. They took this stupid the basketball the nets, the rims off during COVID. And so I was shooting on just a backboard.
What rim?
Like the rim of a basketball hoop.
Yeah, I know, but in what room? You said they took them off in the room.
Oh, is that what I
Where
said?
were you living? Yeah.
Oh.
Where were you living?
I guess I misspoke there.
Okay.
So I was living in my bedroom at the time. Okay. I didn't have a basketball hoop, but just to
Okay.
I like all the parks.
Yes. They shut them down.
Yeah, and that was a big bummer for me because it was like,
Yeah, how is
basketball court's not going to give me COVID,
Yes.
But yeah, basketball, pool, and chess. Those are the games. Those are the games. I like to think and
strategize.
Yeah, I love strategy.
Yeah,
I love a good plan.
Too. Me too.
Yeah.
It's because you're trying to control our circumstances.
Yeah. Like there has to be a way out,
Okay, so we're going to shift. Could you share what led to you becoming a part of the unhoused community here in Portland, Oregon, and what choices or circumstances were a part of that journey?
Well, first it was in Eugene, not Portland.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But I think that's a crucial point because
distinguishing factor. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
it's a different place.
The demographic of unhoused people are very different here than they are in Eugene.
For sure.
Because a Eugene, a Eugene guy that's just wandering, I think he's pretty cool. Because I don't know, there's a lot less meth, I think, in Eugene, and people are sleeping a little better. But I think just the general culture of Eugene is a little more free spirited,
like
and
Ashland.
I think and you get, I think, more Eugene locals, and in the heart of Eugene, or I guess not in, but whatever Eugene is, the idea of Eugene. There's a certain type of people, and I think there's a lot of like aftermath from, not aftermath, but like residual people from the Grateful Dead movement that lived in Eugene, and that culture I think is still trickling around today, and so to that I really love just the walk to a guy and you just say, hey, guy, and he goes, hi. And then you can just sit down and, have you been to Eugene?
Yes.
Underneath the Washington Jefferson Bridge where the basketball court is and the skate park.
Yep, I know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
I'm taking pictures there.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's got like some artistic graffiti.
Yep.
For some reason it looks nice even though it's kind of dirty, But I spent a lot of time during COVID in that little vicinity. That was kind of like all I did during COVID. Just when I wasn't back home in California, I was in Eugene. But that was a home for a lot of people, as it usually is between like December and February when it's wet, because it's permanently illuminated and there's always people because a skate park and a basketball court will draw people. And I think when you're unhoused and living that rogue life, community is a big thing. That's what I've learned. I guess from hanging around those people. And
did you feel like you belonged to something?
I think you just you feel it. You feel like you belong. I don't think I was needed by them and I don't really think I fit in, but I don't think there's any instance where you can be somebody and not fit in with that crowd. Because I think just the nature of the unhoused crowd is just a bunch of people from
all walks of life.
Yeah, the
and
most
all
different
levels
walks
of
of life.
acceptance.
Yeah, and I think that was my favorite thing about just hanging around with the street people, is that you just come as you are, and the only thing that binds you to this guy that doesn't even speak your language is that you're right there together. And it becomes this, there's such a profound emphasis on just companionship and just like being there with your new little buddy. It doesn't matter who they are, as long as that they're just willing to hang around you.
Mm-hmm.
One of my like first friends. You're right. Yeah, because you don't want to be alone. It's tough being alone on the street.
It is. Very difficult.
Yeah. One of my first friends was his name was Chili, and he was like the size of like 2 fire hydrants, very short, red hair, just very raspy voice. But he lived on where Olive and Broadway, that corner.
I have not. I've never lived in Eugene, so and I'm from Southern California and Northern California, like you. So I don't know that specific, but I just have been to Eugene multiple times. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, it's kind of the hub. It's in downtown. It's the hub of, I think, the different branches of downtown. It all comes together, and this is where, it's like where the liquor store is, the main bars, dispensary, a convenience store. And I think those things are sort of, like the traditional roles, the traditional epicenter of,
contributing
an unhoused, community there.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you don't have a home, but you have all those things, what else do you need,
Right.
And so I would, this is back when I didn't have an ID and I was like 18. And so every time I needed, just like a bottle or some weed, I would go to Chili, and I was like, here's this, and it was this like just like you can imagine a little bratty kid, and he just wants a drink, and he like taps a guy on the shoulder, and he's just like, "Hey, can you buy me a beer?" It was one of those. That's kind of how the relationship started. I just shoulder tapped him one time, and thought nothing of it. You go on your way with your little weed and your bottle of whatever. And, as a kid, 18, fresh in college, you're not thinking back and, reappraising the situation. Like, what if that guy has a family, or like, what was his life like? You just, I used him for alcohol and weed. And then the next week I was biking around that area, not looking for anything, but he was just like, "Hey man, I love your bike." And I was like, "Oh, cool. All right." And so we have this thing in common, right? And so that was, I guess, the entrance to this relationship. And I was like, "Yeah, I love mountain bikes." And that was when I was, I'd just had my wrist heal. I kind of abandoned all the hopes of playing tennis in college, and so I was just always on my bike. Love to talk about it.
What brought you to Eugene, so we can
undergrad?
Undergrad. So you were going to
University of Oregon there.
Okay, for anyone who's listening or watching and isn't familiar with the area.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no. And then we started talking about bikes, and Eugene that's more the capital for bikes, right? It's the capital of bike theft. And if there's a lot of bike theft, then there's probably a lot of bikes to begin with, right? And so we began talking about bikes for a long time, and I went on my way. I didn't get any weed from him, no alcohol. Another week goes by, and he's just like, "Hey man, I love your bike." Just kind of he's got that repeating dialogue there. And I was like, yeah, we had that conversation there last week. Go on my way. And then next week I showed up and just sat right next to him. Because right there, Olive and Broadway, that was where him and his little circle of friends hung around. And it became this like, from a, hey, let's have small talk from your bike, and from that, like the, hey, can you get me liquor, to like a, well, I have nothing better to do, and I think you're a nice guy. Let's see what's going on. And I think that's when this guy started turning from just a guy to Chili. And I learned why he was homeless and why he was so happy doing what he was doing. And, I finally got to like really cement himself as a like a real person with a name in my mind, instead of just like just like this archetype of a homeless guy. And he had this little dog named Baby Girl, and a little pit bull thing. And I mean, you can tell she was pretty hungry. And so every Thursday it would be, it started becoming a tradition where I'd bring like dog food for her. And I would come and hang out, feed his dog, and just have a time with him and some of his buddies. And he always had like some sort of like drug to do. And so he was great for me learning to develop empathy for a certain type of people that, coming from Southern California, you have no idea how to interact with these people. Usually you don't. You try not to, right? But this is my first instance of recognizing them as just another person who chooses to be there. Someone like me that loved that lifestyle. And so that became a nice little friendship there. Yeah. Yeah, I would say it wasn't great for, the stopping of my addiction, but it was great for another part of life.
That obviously wasn't your first introduction to drugs, but that was your first introduction to particular drugs was through Chili?
It was more, I think it let me be more accepting of my substance use.
Okay.
Because all of those people were openly using, and at that time I thought it was this whole taboo thing, and like growing up, I didn't have my first drink until senior year of high school after I graduated. Didn't smoke weed until that same night. Every time I would have surgery, they would give you, like the bottle of Vicodin, the hydros. And I was like, I don't need that. And so I never took any pain meds for any surgery. And it was like, my freshman year where I started getting into, I had like Adderall for my ADHD. And so that was one of the first things where at first I was taking it, just to cure my crippling inattention. But then I was like, well, what if I take 6, and just get really, really fast? And then, my friend had like a little dab pen, right? And I was like, well, what if we do both at the same time? And then it turned from let's do this for a purpose to a purpose of like productivity, as like Adderall usually serves, to a let's just have fun, And at the bottom of it, I was struggling with medications like antidepressants, which I think are the bane of that 5 years, 6 years of undergrad, and I guess 4 years of high school too. I started taking them when I was 16, I think. I think one of the, similar to what we were talking about earlier, I hated it. So painful.
You hated that you had to take it?
All of it. Hated that I had to take it. Hated how it made me feel, but did it anyways because some psychiatrist prescribed it to me.
Did you have an official diagnosis, or was it just?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder.
Okay. So it was supposed
16.
to help with that.
Yeah, but I was so pissed. I'm so pissed now. I wasn't pissed at the time because you're just looking for a solution when you're in it, right?
Right.
And it does do great things for certain people.
Yes.
But my biggest qualm with it, and I think the general psychiatry world is the hairpin trigger to prescribe somebody to relieve pain.
Yes.
And I think it's no different than
Thank you for calling that out.
opioid epidemic is that, we're instead of, like, oh, how much pain are you in? 1 to 10 on a scale, they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And in a psychiatrist's office, that's really what it is. It's you describe your pain and you're like, it all sucks and I don't want to do it. And then here's some lorazepam, here's an SSRI. You're not over 18, and the box says don't take it if you're under 18, but you should take it anyways. and that was it, because you listen to the doctor. They
yes,
say,
you do.
This is how you get out of pain.
That's also what your parents listen to too. They adopt the belief system of that something needed to be fixed, right?
Yeah. We never tried going any other route. There was no like, well, why do you think you're feeling that way? Like, let's use our brains. There was no like, here's
go to
piece of paper.
therapy or get a counselor to work through the depression and use some interventions that might be useful to help produce a different impact in your life.
Yeah.
I also was on antidepressant. I was much older than you, so I did not take it for very long. I did not like it. I do agree that it can be very useful. Mm-hmm. But for me, what it made me feel is, and I think a lot of people could probably agree, that it took out the extreme highs and the low lows. Right. So essentially your life is very flat. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like I became, like everything was ambiguous. Thank you. But in addition to that, it's almost like I became apathetic to that life. It's like I didn't care one way or the other, because I was like, well, that's the shittiest thing that is happening right now, but I can't feel it. So like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And emotions give meaning to things.
Yes, they do.
I think there's a lot of truth to saying that meaning comes from feelings.
Yes.
Because you can rationalize anything however way you want it, but if you don't interpret it as having a certain amount of weight or affecting, or I guess if it can't affect you, then it doesn't really mean anything, I think. And affections come from emotions. And
processing and integrating them.
Yeah.
And
releasing
I think so.
Them. Yeah. I started getting to, like, I declared my major from philosophy from business because I was like, business doesn't matter to me. And the only thing that I can do is think. I can't feel anything. And I don't feel the need to make money. And so I just want to think. And so I was like, philosophy, And then, I started thinking, I was like, it's better to feel something than nothing, Mm-hmm. I'd rather feel sad and know that there is a happiness out there, even though I'm not feeling it right now. Just to know that I'm sad here and to know that I can be happy doesn't mean I'm, not capable of it. But if I'm fully apathetic, the inexistence of like everything, every emotion kind of led me to believe that there's no happiness.
Yeah. And you had a psychiatrist that, just essentially wrote you a prescription. I was very fortunate, and I was very cautious too, and skeptical of medicine to begin with, because that's how I was raised. Mm-hmm. So the psychiatrist that I went to was somebody that I searched out as one of the best in the area. Mm. And I had a very different conversation about it. Mm. And I was on it for a very short window of time, I'd say, because of the intensity of the crisis that I was in, which is what it's intended for. Yeah. And there was also a lot of conversation. Some of the things that woman taught me about myself to manage and stay emotionally regulated, I still teach other people. I still think about, I still go back to the analogies that she gave me to help understand the reason why I was feeling the intensity and helping me reset boundaries that were healthier for me. I learned so many things from her. So I think that when used correctly and with the right intention, But for anyone who's listening or watching the podcast before this, I had somebody who does residential treatment. We met him. Cool. Oh, no, you weren't in that class, but I met him at Lewis and Clark in one of my other classes. And he was touching on this point, and now I've forgotten what my point was. Shit. What was I just talking about before I was telling you who he was?
Residential treatment. Talking about... We're talking about something, for sure.
We were talking about you, and then it reminded me of something that he said in regards to, addiction treatment. Okay, so when it comes to, having somebody with psychiatrist having that intentionality about actually helping you process what it is that you're going through. And that's where medicine is supposed to help us, right, in crisis management.
Right.
That's what its intended purpose was for. And he did an entire presentation in our classroom and was talking about it in the podcast before this about how that has happened, essentially, through the opioid era, right? Before this fentanyl and meth era was opioids. And psychiatrists were actually paid, a tremendous amount of money to write these prescriptions. And I think that was the kind of the real shift that has created the culture, the environment that we now live in. I'm not saying that people weren't addicted to substances at any other time throughout, the history of evolution, but that really has shifted how we look at addiction, and how medicine has contributed to that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just being goal driven, if a patient shows up, they're looking
profit
for
driven
too.
Very profit driven.
Yeah. But you won't have.
It's not about the person.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the person. Is I guess where I was going with that is having empathy for you as a kid who was listening to your parents, wanting to be able to get through this. Your parents were listening to somebody who was giving advice, who should know more about this, and both sets, or all three of you, were essentially getting the guidance of this person, and they were being paid to give you something that was not necessarily the best approach, at least in your opinion.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I was necessarily an object of, or I guess just a means to the psychiatrist's ends. Surely they have a goal of this person needs pain, or has pain, needs a solution.
They also make money after writing the prescriptions.
Yeah, but to think about if I said, well, that pain is still there, I don't like it, I'm not going to do this anymore. There's no money in there.
Nope.
And so, Dan, he's just like, whatever his name was, he's, you're going to give them meds and hope that they like the meds, and now they get to pay all this money forever because it's so hard to get off of SSRIs. Meds. Yeah. I mean, it fully reshapes your world.
Yes, it does.
Fully reshapes your world.
And becomes a dependency. It's just a different dependency, right?
Yeah.
And that's like not minimizing people who like that actually really need it. I'm not trying to say nobody needs it. I'm just saying great. It creates a addiction of sorts, right?
Yeah, they do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I think my biggest qualm, going back to my other biggest qualm, but similar thread of qualm, is that I think they're very good when used properly, but kind of like an anesthesia, if you're getting anesthetized, but then there's no doctor, or there's no thing outside of you to help you navigate the surgery or the conflict that's happening inside of you. Now you're just numb
and lost
until you wake up. Yeah, but you're anesthetized, but you're moving around.
Yes.
And you're like,
well, what's
the point? What's the point of this all?
Yeah. And so that was your biggest takeaway.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to get in and do the surgery yourself, I think. Or at least know that there is a surgery needed. Yeah. And the cure just isn't like anesthesia, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Good insight. So I'm trying to get to the point where you are using fentanyl. Could you catch us up?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that I had a lot of Vicodin from the surgeries. I remember just being kind of in a pit of just, like an emotional pit, the full array of, painful emotions. And I was like, these antidepressants aren't working. They feel like they're working against me. I was drinking a lot, so, partially my fault, but...
Which is depressive, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I had yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
A terrible little thing. And I was like, well, maybe these will help. I knew they weren't going to help, but I was like, maybe I'll just feel better right now. Started taking a bunch of Vicodin. And then I was like, I'd like to have a little bit more of this, and I had no money at that time, and or like no cash, I guess. I was always able to not be hungry, right? But I didn't have like, fentanyl money, fentanyl cash.
You didn't have extra money.
Yeah, that didn't.
You didn't have fun money.
I didn't. Yeah, fun money in the state that I was in didn't exist.
Yes.
And so I was like, I need to figure this out. And I started with like $50, and I ended up going on the dark web and just getting a bunch of shit, things that I was thinking maybe that'll be of use to somebody here. Because I knew I was going to steer into the opioid route, but I knew that it was going to be expensive, and I didn't want to use the only $50 that I had to just like, finitely consume. I wanted to infinitely consume, and so I was like, oh, I got these $50 and let's just invest it. And so I got a lot of Adderall, mushrooms, and acid was a big one, and ketamine, and just had like a big drawer full of stuff, and I think this little terrible business that I had started as like the grand plan was to just have enough money so that I could infinitely use, because the Vicodin shortage was coming.
It's real.
It was coming near.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't want to run out. And Vicodin's the worst thing to run out of.
Yes,
because it's not even that fun. But it's just you can't really get it. And so started selling there, and I remember getting just a bag of, it was like a gram of black tar. It's my second year in college, and
explain to people what black tar is.
Black tar is a sticky, gooey, unrefined heroin. Well, maybe it's not unrefined, but it's there's 4 different declensions of heroin, right? Like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4 is different from 3 in the sense that is mixed with another thing, and you can't. You shouldn't smoke it because it just doesn't burn well. But it's just a different process, right? But as a kid, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I was just like, black tar heroin, buy it. And it's like $30. And so that just became like my first thing that I did outside of Vicodin. And
how do you consume it?
I smoked it because I was like, well, I don't really know what to do. And so I just put it on foil.
What are you supposed to do with it? Do you know now?
I know a lot of people that like to shoot it.
Okay.
But it just smells so bad and it tastes really bad when you smoke it.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't really snort it all that well because it's pretty sticky. So it's definitely best in a solution. But yeah, it was this horrible cycle of making money and then putting it into opiates, which that was my last time doing black tar. I was like, this tastes terrible. But I ended up getting just a bunch of the, they're called like M boxes at the time, like they're just little blue oxys cut with Fent they have like an M, and they have a little box around the M.
I know exactly what they look like.
It's what killed Mac Miller, you know. And that was it. You know, once I got those, I was like, I don't need anything else.
And it's cheap and available.
Cheap and available. Yeah, everyone had it at the time.
What's the high like?
It's mostly Fent. And eventually I did get into just straight Fent because I didn't want to go through the web anymore. I had enough money. But it's just big warm blanket, you know, standard opiate feeling. I liked Oxy because it was more energizing than say like just Vicodin. It's more uplifting. Fent definitely I like laid the hammer a little bit, you know, and so that part is sedative. But I like Oxy just because it felt like I can just move around, and so I'd always smoke before I was gonna go work out or, you know, play basketball or go skiing. Yeah, that next year, skiing and those little blues were a big part of my life, and it was just a good feeling. It's very hard. It's the thing that you really wanted in life given to you, just in a little pill. You know, it's the thing that you've been missing, I guess. But it's delivered to you in like in a fake way. You know, you get this illusion of satisfaction.
Well, you're essentially leaving your body. If you see people on the street who are, I can't remember, there's a term, but because I worked with the unhoused community and people who are currently on fentanyl a lot of times are bent over and almost asleep on their feet, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a very powerful way to leave your body.
It is. Yeah. And mine too. You know, you don't really want to, I guess that's me right there. I try to separate the bodily intent of opioids, you know, solve the body pain, but and separate it from, you know, like the mind pain, which I think opioids are unfortunately better at doing.
They're very good at doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really much of an emphasis on opioids trying to cure bodily pain on the streets, you know. But it takes you out of this world.
And is that what was so addictive?
This is the me walking around the hurdle instead of trying to jump over it. Yeah.
And did you find that was common with most of the people that you were with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think it's a very similar thing that, you know, between all people that are struggling with an addiction, it's you're seeking to change something, you know. And I've always thought that that's where the, like, you know, the serenity prayer, you know, it's just accepting the thing that you know, I mean, I guess you're not accepting the thing that you want to change in a natural way. And so you're looking to this thing to make you believe like you can change it, or that you don't really have a need to change it. And
the latter.
Yeah. But the desire to change always, you know, the ones that was bringing you pain before you started using, or before you used to fix it, that desire becomes so much more pronounced when, you know, the drugs are leaving your body and you wake up. You're like, damn, I woke up. And you're like, well, it didn't change. It's still there. Yeah, there's got to be something else. Yeah, other than just smoking away your
and
problems.
You get caught in the cycle.
It's the cycle. Yeah, it's yeah. Instead of a circle, I always imagine it to be like a
spiral.
Yeah, a big spiral. Yeah, I guess that's why they say you're spiraling. But yeah.
Well, you're just revisiting the same same kind of lessons, right?
Yeah, you know, that little
looking
like
at it
sand
from
maze.
a little bit higher perspective each time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, you know that little sand maze? It's like on the table and it has grooves, and then you try and like work a little marble through the sand there. Yeah, That's the image of my mind when it comes to addiction. I think just you're lost in this maze, and there's certain ways to like shortcut. You're going from like the inside to the outside, but you're just fully in sand all the time. I'm always thinking I'm just a little marble in sand when I'm using. Yeah.
Where were your parents in all of this?
Home.
Were they aware that this was going on for you?
Yes. January 2020 is when I called them, and I think it was 2019. It might have been 2020, I think. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. And they're like, oh, like your class? And I was like, no, it's much more than that. And so I ended up coming home and had like one day of just, like freedom before I was destined for, like a program, right? And I was like, well, I'm not going out like this, and so I went on this whole crazy adventure all night, and then found myself in a hospital. And then that was my parents' reintroduction to my life at that time. And so I'd been living and struggling in Oregon while they were in California, right? And I come back from one day, and then they watch me do this whole, series of shenanigans. I drove down to San Diego, got pulled over by a cop because I was doing drunken donuts in the stupid parking lot there, and pulled me over, and he was like, come on, dude. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm just, donuts, you love donuts, you're a cop. And he was like, dude, what's going on? And so he pulled me out, sat me on the curb there, and searched my car and just found all my stuff, the whole arsenal of abuse there. And he was like, I'm not gonna do anything to you. Because I was, like 19 at the time, and he was like, I can just ruin you, but you got to promise me this. You got to promise me you're going to go to treatment tomorrow. And because I was planning to go there.
Yeah.
But he was like, buddy, you need help. I was like,
Yeah.
And so, it's either tell this cop who's offering you just hypothetical help, or just, proposing you get some hypothetical help, or say no, arrest me. And so I was like, there's an obvious answer here. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to treatment. And so I ended up taking the rest of, I was on Xanax at the time, and I had a bottle of gin. Those were like this is my little, Mustang Sally right there for that night. And I just like found some guy, and I went to UCSD at the time, because that's where I was in a parking lot there. And so I was just hanging out with him, I think, and then just consumed both of them, and then found myself in the hospital, and my parents were just like right there. I was like, oh, that sucks. And then the very next day I went to treatment. And so to answer your question, I was like, I was definitely living a life separate from them. They were there, as much as they could have been, but to my own doing. I was taking my matters into my own hands, and just wrecking myself, and got them. I guess like we merged lives again for one day, and that was that. And then I'll just fast forward. Got out of treatment, sober for a little bit, then went back to class. Sorry. It was COVID at the time. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long were you in treatment?
6 months.
Okay.
6 months.
Wow.
I think that time was 3 months. And then, I was clean, and then, went back to Eugene for, I think, 5 months. And then I wasn't able to find, those blues anymore. And so, because I didn't want to do the dark web stuff, and Chili died when I was in California, and so I was just I ended up finding Fent at that time, and it's cheap. You can get a gram, and it lasts you for so much, like the price to usage from pills. Yeah, it's so easy.
Yeah. It goes for $1, right?
Dose for $1. Yeah. Yeah, just one little hit.
Mm-hmm. And how long does the hit last? Like 2 hours?
It's about, it depends.
Yeah.
What you're doing, if you're smoking it or shooting it, but
it's not long.
It's like,
it doesn't.
No, Fent
last
has
all
such
day.
a fast half-life, and so it comes on fast, leaves fast, and then withdrawals are horrible.
And then you want more.
Then you want more, yeah. But once I got into Fent, I remember just like waking up on my toilet 4 days in a row, and then I went back to treatment, and that was the 6-month stint. And that was, I got out 4th of July of 2022, I think. And then relapsed that November. My buddy threw away all my drugs, threw everything I had. I like reaccumulated my inventory, right? And I was like asleep at 5:00 p.m. There was a party right next door that I was supposed to go to. But then my friend just like walked in and threw away all the things that were bringing me pain, just like, how dare him, saving me. I hate him. And then we ended up, I like grabbed all my money. I was like, I'm going to get more. And then ran against, like upstream on Patterson and like through traffic trying to lose him. And then he's just like, chasing after me. And then I sat down and started like crying. Remember that? Just like, this is terrible. And then I got clean. And that was it. That was November 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
When in all of that did you have a friend that you told me who was at the party we were at use Narcan on you? When in all of that process?
Well, I didn't fully get... It's a weird memory there. Oh, he didn't Narcan me, but he found... So I was trying to visit one of my friends in the library, and I was like, oh, where are you? And then I was waiting for a response, and then took a hit, nodded out, and then it was like 6 p.m. Everyone's gone. My car was dead because I think I fell asleep while I was on. Door was open, window was open. I'm covered in vomit. And like, what the hell happened? And my friend came and got me, and from then I think we just went to go get a thing of Narcan. I don't remember it all that well, but I remember waking up and being okay. And then he came and got me, and I'm not really sure how I survived that, but I don't know if he Narcaned me or not.
That's okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So fast forward to when you're sitting on the curb with your other friend.
Yeah.
After running through traffic the wrong direction.
Yeah.
What finally shifted for you? Why was that moment so pivotal? Why
I called
had
my
it become
mom.
so painful?
I called my mom, and Liam had already, I think, mentioned to her that, like, this guy is on something. He's doing he's having fun. He's having too much fun for his own good. And my mom called me out of worry, or I called her some way, and she was like, frantically, like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, of course, because as a kid who's, you're, shoulder deep in addiction, you're, of course, your mom should know that it's okay, And then she was like, well, are you taking a bunch of Xanax? And then I'm like, oh, she kind of knows. She knows, like, the wrong detail, I guess. And so I was like, yeah, Xanax, of course, nothing else. And she's like, nothing else. And I'm like, oh, God. And then I just started crying. I told her, I was like, yep, this is, my mom was great. She took the next flight, like, the next day. And then I withdrew with my mom. And I was, at the same time, I was
Wow.
going through the end of my relationship with my girlfriend at the time. And I ended up writing her this letter, read it to my mom, but wrote it to her at the time. And she was with this other guy because I was in the hospital at the time, and I texted her. I was like, I'm sorry for all this, just as you would, do intoxicatedly. But she was like, I can't talk right now. I'm with somebody. I'm like, okay, cool. And then spent the next 72 hours just dying for a second. But yeah, that's the second bookend of my little adventure there. Yeah. Yeah, it started out just because I was, I think, feeling bad. Feeling bad about myself and spiraling from medication, not knowing how to... I was living alone at the time, too, but just not knowing how to get along with it all. And then figure it out through, ways that maybe aren't that great. And then it ended there because I had a really good friend who grabbed my hand while I was standing on the edge, I guess. Yeah, then I've been doing good.
How long have you been sober?
It's going to be coming up on my 2 years here. My mom texted me yesterday, and she was like, your 2 years are coming up, right, in a week? And I was like, maybe, I guess. And she was like, what do you mean you guess? Because she's like, did you use? Have you been using? I'm like, oh, no, I wasn't keeping track.
Yeah.
And then she was like, oh. I'm like, wow, it's a mom right there. Yeah. Keeping track of my sobriety.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And cheering you on.
Her and my dad have been nothing but, grateful that I'm still alive, but supportive in my journey, whatever that might be. And now I'm here going to school, and they believe in me. I don't know if I believe in myself, but
you're doing great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that why you got into the program?
Yeah.
Or is it that what drew you?
Yeah.
Is trying to help people understand.
Yeah, I love just hanging out with people, just finding truths, Yeah. Yeah, I used to do a lot of writing in undergrad about just kind of the stories that I would hear or the things that I would find out while talking to just, some street people. And I was telling you, I wrote that story and, won the contest there. And that was awesome for me because I was like, well, these stories are, sure they mean something to me, but now I think they mean something to somebody else. Well. Mm-hmm. I got that validation. And so it's like, well, if I can, if it is worth something, well, then that's pretty awesome. And so
you like sharing your story.
Yeah, and I think interacting with other people's as well. Because it wasn't, I think the thing that I took away from that was not that my story is beautiful, but because most of it was, or I guess a big part of it was revolving around Chile. That's what the story was about. And so I was like, well, I like sharing this person's story. Even though it's not with him, I do love the idea that I can, I think, bring validation to the life that this guy was living. And post Korean barbecue, because I spent all the money on all my friends to go eat a bunch of meat. And so after that, I was like, well, what's next? And I was like, I really loved writing about that stuff. I really loved, giving this appraisal to the conversation that I had and all of the many conversations that I've had with just some person, sitting there or standing by you, and you just, like, hey, guy, And so I think since then it's made me just want to write. So I've been doing a lot of writing since then. And, it got me into grad school too. And so I think the whole experience has changed the way that I interact with, just the person that's I'm talking to, the person that I'm with, or the world that I'm living in, you know?
Yeah. So, it's given you an interesting perspective.
It's made me curious, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's made me very curious.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated why we do what we do.
Yeah.
I'll never figure that out necessarily.
Right. Yeah. I was not curious when, I was I was like rolling by Chili and, he got me weed and alcohol. I was not curious about who he was, but post the last 6 years, I love that. I love that, that process of being inquisitive to somebody, just some random guy, and just learning what's their story, And I think that's my draw to therapy. I love puzzles too, and I think addiction is a very interesting puzzle.
It is. It is. What do you hope people will take away from your story?
The first thing that comes to my mind is just like a lyric from a song by John Prine, and it's just, if you see some guy standing there, say hello in there, and that was, I was just saying it, but that's like my favorite thing about the life that I've lived, is just being able to wonder, I guess, and learning about Chile and learning that there's a whole adventure there, is if I want it, but it doesn't really commence until you just stop and say hello in there. Behind any set of sad eyes, just some guy sitting by the dumpster at a 7-Eleven, there's something that got him there, and I really just love saying, like, hey, all right, buddy. And so, if there's something to take away, I guess it's just, just because he's there doesn't mean that's all he is, There's something good about wondering about somebody, Yeah. So maybe that's at least that's my takeaway to my story.
Is there a message you would like to share with others who might be struggling as you once were?
The message. Well, my message to myself, I think, is like, because I'm still struggling, I'm always struggling.
Yeah, of course.
But, not to...
There's some struggle in life for sure.
Yeah, but not to the same degree where I'm, but just finding a purpose and just taking care of my garden, my metaphorical, like, bodily garden, talking to people, just doing the things that are good for health, and then finding a thing that I can put, like, the thing that is true to me into, whether that's a hobby or a game or writing or reading, something that I can just be myself in. I don't know. I've always felt that, like, being useless with myself is really sad. Sad to me. Like, it'll bring me down if I'm just, like, not doing much, I guess. If I don't feel like I'm using myself in some way. Yeah, I don't know if I feel the need to contribute to the world as much as I do I guess I do, but it's more so, let me make use of myself to something. Rather, I need to make my mark in the world. I think there are opposite sides to the same coin, but
you don't want to waste your opportunity.
Yeah, my dad hated wasting food, and so he would, he put on a lot of weight when I was when he was raising me, just maybe because he would cook for me and then I wouldn't eat it all. And so he was like, I hate wasting food. I'm going to eat it. But I think I bring a similar idea with me into my adulthood, where I'm like, I can't let myself go to waste, So whether it's just like, going for a run or working out or just making use of my faculties, don't let it go to waste, I suppose. Find a drive, or not a drive, but a destination for yourself, I guess. Yeah. At least that's what has made it less bad for me. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting this podcast. Your presence here means the world to me, and I'm truly grateful for your time and energy. If this conversation resonated with you or sparked any questions, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from each of you. Your insights, experiences, and curiosities always enrich this space. It's important to remember that trauma, often unseen and unacknowledged, can keep us from living fully in our joy. Through my intuitive healing process, I help release the weight of generational trauma, empowering you to reconnect with your true self and experience life in greater harmony. If you feel called to explore this deeper work, I invite you to book a one-on-one intuitive session or even embark on a personalized journey with the Phoenix Immersion, a 2-day retreat designed to support profound transformation. You can find all the details below. For those who've liked, subscribed, or left comments already, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your engagement means everything, and I'm deeply grateful for the connection we're building in this community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I'm excited for all the healing and transformation we'll continue to explore together. As always, I'm forever grateful for you, and I cannot wait to see what unfolds next. Take care, and until next time.